Okay, this is Pops at Legal Reform. I guess doing a little publicity for myself, trying to draw you here. There's no fee, no charge. I ask for nothing and accept no donations. I don't do it for the money. I don't do it for the glory. I just do it as a public service. You know, I've been at this a long time on my quest for due process to know what it was, the meaning, the tools involved. And that started in 1971 when I read the Constitution. That led me to the Declaration of Independence. And that led me to the Magna Carta and the understanding of the rule of law. So this is partly how I feel. The secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is keeping them ignorant. So it's not the point of actually looking for followers. I'm looking for leaders. Everybody takes the oath to that. All civil servants do. And if you're not a civil servant, a public servant, this is who you are. We the people. You know, in a few legal arguments, I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers accuse me of practicing law. I accuse them of not practicing law, not living up to the oath. And then I would stipulate the penalties for violating the oath, and that's deprivation of rights. Your constitutional duties are my constitutional rights. That's deprivation of rights. That's where it always starts. Okay. And so when you go to court, I was telling some people, and your lawyer isn't explaining to you the rules, professional conduct, code of judicial conduct, going over it, because these are the laws within a court of law. So that's deprivation of rights. Okay, it says right here, deprivation of rights. Okay. And the reason I say that, because your lawyer wouldn't get away what he gets away with, or she, if the judge and the opposing party didn't allow it. So thus, in the rules and the codes, reporting misconduct is mandatory. Nobody's doing that. And that creates a conspiracy. Your lawyer is required to report the judge for judicial misconduct, the opposing party, if it's the state's attorney, for prosecutorial misconduct. And he literally has to cite them for not citing him. He has to cite them for misconduct, for failure to report him for misconduct. So everybody's got to report each other. Self-reporting is mandatory, as well as reporting anybody that violates the rules or the codes. Pretty simple, if you ask me. Back in 1979, when I first read the rules of professional conduct, it led me to the code of judicial conduct, and I found it was a symbiotic relationship. And in violating the rules of professional conduct in general, the code of judicial conduct is violated because the judge never reported your attorney for ineffective assistance of counsel, the opposing party, whether it be the state's attorney or any other attorney in any court of law, for misconduct, for violating the rules. It's always intentional. There's no mistake. That's a law. The public interest must do what's in the public interest and maintain the public trust. It's in the preamble, the rules of professional conduct, which is the duty of all lawyers and judges, to do what's in the public interest and maintain the public trust. And the public trust is a legal system. It's in its entirety. That's part of your trust fund, just like clean water, air. Okay. Wow, imagine if everyone walked into court and told the judge to do their job and cite all the violations of the rules of professional conduct, and every lawyer would have to would have to cite every judge for violating the Code of Judicial Conduct. It would be like going to the Super Bowl and the other team didn't show up. A huge win for your team because the other team was disqualified for cheating. They had a deflate gate, right? So I did a whole little thing on it, you know. I have qualified immunity, but the rule of law abolished qualified immunity. It's in the Magna Carta. It is. They started, the United States started using qualified immunity back in '67 in Pearson versus Ray, where some preachers, black and white, were arrested because they were waiting for a bus at a bus station. They were out trying to get people to vote, register to vote, and the police didn't like. They were by a sign, and it said colored people only, and the police told them, you got to go over there and whatever, and they wound up saying, you know, first they were arresting the white preachers, I think, and then the black preachers opened their mouth and they got arrested. And so in '67, they dropped the case, but they said they couldn't sue the cops because of they called this thing the good faith measure. The cops thought they were enforcing the law, but I mean, seriously, that violates the rule of law. If the cops knew the law, they wouldn't be arresting somebody. They wouldn't be violating their constitutional right. Freedom of assembly, those preachers were saying freedom of religion. See, all I'm doing is just talking to you about laws. People like to make some of the things I say political. It has nothing to do with politics, just the law, all right? I'm a constitutionalist. State's attorney, I demand you exonerate me because I have exculpatory evidence. Rule 3.8 of the Rules of Professional Conduct say that's your job. You know the rules, and so do I. Which, if you look up the Rules of Professional Conduct, and it's in every state. Every state is modeled after the ABA, Model Rules of Professional Conduct, and that's just the way it is. It's federal law. You know, state can override that, or they can't take away. They can only add to it to give it some juice, some power. The secret of freedom lies in educated people. Okay, I like that one. See, now this is, you know, I'm old, you know, so I don't think I got that many years to go. My health is bad. So I'm not looking for followers, actually. I'm looking for leaders. I hate to say that I'm old and it sounds, but the younger, the better to learn this stuff. Hey, I read the Constitution when I was 10 years old. If I understood it, I'm sure any 10-year-old would understand it. You know, just apply the letter of the law. You don't even have to tell the kids to apply the letter of the law, because what they see, you can't tell them different. No, it says this right here. See, but when it comes to lawyers and judges, they like to violate the letter of the law, and the penalties for violating law are fines, removal from public service, and incarceration. And if death is involved, they also can get the death penalty. But see, my goal is to teach everybody as young as possible, starting as young as possible, as young as I did. Hey, when I read this when I was 10 years old, you know, I used to, you know, growing up, I was listening to Martin Luther King, you know. When I first started hearing him, I didn't really know who it was, but when I went to school, they had this thing called catechism. There was no prayer, no religion in school. So if you wanted to reach out to your, you know, people of your faith, you were allowed to leave one day of school to go to your house of worship. Unless you were in a parochial school. Yeah, then there was prayer and, you know, but when I read this and realized it wasn't happening, and then I kept hearing Martin Luther King's speeches in my head. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Amongst these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You know. In the Declaration, it also says that anybody that makes any attempt to usurp your inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it's not only your right, but your duty to remove such a government. I did a video, and I did a lot of videos. And people say, oh, you talk like, yeah, but there's so much that's supposed to be happening that isn't happening. And I really need your help. I'm talking to people in Texas, texting them. I send them a lot of links. They look for my guidance, but the only guidance is giving them a lot of the stuff I read back in the day, and I try to get people to teach me how to use a computer and how to use the internet. Yeah, so it took me a lot longer, and I had to figure it out myself. See, I'm trying to stop that. I use the right to remain silent. By remaining silent, got my ass kicked a couple times by the cops. Not funny, but still, This is one place one person I got inspiration from. Kazimir Pulaski. My firstborn was supposed to be named after him. A man to the manor born, not only of royal blood, not only of noble blood, but of noble heart and mind. The epitome of what nobility is supposed to be about. Nobility is supposed to be about serving your people, caring for your people as a parent does their children. Somewhere or another, somewhere along the line, most royalty lost track of that. But not Kazimir Pulaski, as he in the tradition of Mr. General My Fate, an American hero, one of the greatest generals in my book to ever exist. I came here with freedom, where freedom is being defended, to serve it and to live or die for it. How many times must I die? You see where they beat the life out of me and left me for dead. Okay, so how can anybody claim qualified immunity if this is the king of laws? If the United States did have a king, it would be the rule of law. So qualified immunity can't exist. That was under the color of law. Okay? Simple as that. I mean, just do your research, and, if you want to go through my videos, you've seen I did quite a bit of research. But actually, a lot of stuff I read, I'm just, and it was, I used to listen to the radio most of the time when I was a kid back in the 60s. And so it wasn't until just before we moved I actually found out Martin Luther King was black. So I tell my story so you can tell yours, okay? And my story's about what I read. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. And that's why I started legal reform. They're trying to get me to sign up for this thing where trying to put some to my post. But see, this is what they want to put. Now, if I want to post it, I got to try it now and pay something. But see,
this is the end. This is the end. Hold your breath. Hold your breath.
See, so it's right here. It's against the law, federal law. deprive rights. Conspiracy against rights under the color of law is a serious federal felony punishable up to 10 years in prison, with penalties escalate to life imprisonment or death penalty. If death results, it applies to officials or private individuals conspiring to willfully violate constitutional rights. Key penalties: fines, imprisonment for up to 10 years, bodily injury, weapon use. If the act involves dangerous weapon or cause of bodily injury, penalties may increase. Death, kidnapping, sexual abuse. If the conspiracy results in death or involves kidnapping, attempted murder, or aggravated sexual abuse, punishment may be a term of use imprisonment or the death penalty. Civil actions may also pursue civil remedies. And if you Google, as I put here, a conspiracy against rights under the law complaint form, it'll take you to the DOJ's website, Civil Rights Division, and there it tells you they will prosecute and sue on your behalf, which kind of sucks that, they know everybody in the legal system knows it's going on, but they won't stop it unless you file a complaint. Oh man, back in the day when I was young, we used to call that red tape. So I'm trying to help you get past the red tape, that's all. Okay? Just teaching you ways to get through, using, your government officials to do their job. This woman, she's magnificent. Woman of substance. Getting a judge to live up to the oath and abide by the code of judicial conduct, let alone enforce the rules of professional conduct, is near impossible, but she keeps trying. Imagine, if you will, our public servants were actually prosecuted and penalized for the laws they broke. People call her a conspiracy theorist until she started showing them the laws, taking people to task, judges, lawyers. And she said I helped her out a lot just recently. She'd been on this move for a long time. Brilliant woman. And she always looks to improve herself. Not physically, I'm talking about mentally. She understands me when I say educating oneself is a never-ending process. Wrongful conviction compensation. I even tell you how to get it, what to say, or what laws to use. I'm not telling you what to say. I'm just throwing a bunch of laws at you. And all you got to do is copy and paste these laws from legal websites, court cases, whatever. And where'd you get that? Off the internet. It was in, something law book or some law school. That's all. I show you a bunch of law schools, okay? Like I put accountabilities a day, and first we hold these truths. People hold you to the oath they took. Remember, violating that oath is deprivation of rights, because their constitutional duties is described in the Constitution, and those are your constitutional rights. So by breaking the oath, that's deprivation of rights. And the deprivation of rights is they're trying to limit it. Some states, the habeas corpus, that's not in the public interest, which says it's against the law. It's in the interest of the bar. So they can keep having their way, which is against the law. If you read the rules of professional conduct, it says that in the preamble. Those are laws. Food for thought. Okay, so what do you think about that? Are we a democracy? Are we actually a democracy? We all know, a whole lot of politicians, the RNC, the DNC, they work for Wall Street. And Wall Street, what? Corporations, conglomerates, monopolies, not U.S. citizens. Makes you wonder, how is Citizens United not violating the rule of law? I mean, if you think about it, Citizens United violated the rule of law. I mean, according to the Constitution was to serve the greater good, the needs of the many, not the greed of the few. That's what legal reform is about. That's all I'm just. I don't care what side you are, in the political arena. Let's just keep this about the law, getting constitutionally correct, okay? That's all, getting constitutionally correct. This tells you a way to use an effective assistance counsel motion, overturn a wrongful conviction as possible, And I talked to why. And the easiest one is filing for failure to give you a quick and speedy trial. They didn't do that, and that's against the law. So look up quick and speedy trial. I actually did a video on that, and it says you can get out of jail free. Oh yeah, there's a video. There's a video on it. I like to remind people of that. The last cop I reminded of that, he wasn't happy. Then I told him, hey, look, you got the policeman's code of conduct. You ain't even doing that. He started making up laws. And then I mentioned the rule of law and violations of that. And the other cops were laughing. They usually, quite a few show up. When they showed up, they just leaned up against the car and they were laughing because I was throwing laws out in this, and making fun of them in the same process. When someone tries explaining the law to me, if you break the law, you're held to the letter of the law. I strongly suggest you do the same when they break the law, okay? Which they do. You go to court and you testify to something, and lawyers will often ask you the same questions, but in many different forms. And what they're doing is trying to get you to change the answer you gave to the first question. But when I asked you this before, you said this, but now you're saying that. But you're saying your question is misleading. You're trying to, a couple of times I was put in that position. I said, ask and answer. How many times are you going to repeat the same question in a different manner? How many times? A couple of times people took my advice when I said just, write it out on paper. Go to Notary Public, have it notarized in front of them, and they could use that. It's like a motion to comply, but you don't have to go in there and talk to nobody. You just write down what you said happened. You go to Notary Public, have it notarized. It becomes a legal document. And I had my buddy Bobo get for child custody. His ex-wife was complaining she had custody. Well, she was still his wife at the time, but she was saying she was 7. But anyways, she didn't have custody. He had custody. And I said, just go get some affidavits from the teachers, the doctors, the landlord, bring a copy of the lease, the medical records, and, and on the first day it'll get thrown out. And it did. And the judge didn't like it because he said, you need a lawyer. And he says, no, I have a right to be heard. What's that called, Mario? And I said, the Code of Judicial Conduct. And the judge let him proceed. And said, what's this? He handed a folder of affidavits. And he says, it's expediting litigation. What's that called? I said, being competent, diligence, expediting litigation. And the judge was mad. And they were garnishing his wages. They had to give him back his money. His wife soon became his ex-wife. She had to pay back the government and I guess get a job or something. I don't know, Bob. I didn't see him for a while. And after I seen him, because he got money back, so he took a while off of work. And it was our part-time job. So he quit part-time for a while because he didn't have to. And relaxed, spent more time with his kid, had a good time. They quit garnishing his wages, and that led to his divorce. And his wife, in turn, had to get his kid medical insurance. And Me talking about eviction court. It's a slap suit. That's all it is. And it's a conspiracy against rights under the color of law, because a lawyer is supposed to advise his client what he's doing here is illegal. All these repairs are mandatory. They're health hazards, you know. They say, why don't you move? But I can't afford to move. I'm on SSDI. Some people say, well, if you know so much, I never asked anybody for anything for what I've done and for as long as I've done it. And I don't intend to. What if the system paid me what they owed me? I'd pretty much have a pretty fancy house, because we went at it long many times. For unemployment, they denied me unemployment, don't know why. And then finally I went, they gave me a court date, and I went. And then the judge took me in the conference chambers and started yelling at me. Wasn't even on the record. And it was simply because I wouldn't sign any papers to give my employer. They knew I had PTSD, and they wanted a list of the medications. So they wanted me to sign a release for my medical records and my psychiatric records. And I said no. Called the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. They took the case. Eventually, they kept chiseling it down. Then they told me to get a lawyer. I went to the National Labor Relations Board because I was trying to unionize the company too. And they said there was nothing they can do about it, and they're too friendly, management friendly. But they're public servants, so their duty is to we the people. They have they can't take orders from politicians or political parties. I did a video on that as well. A motion to quash to overturn a wrongful conviction. That just means you're challenging the court that wrongfully convicted you, and you're telling them, hey, you broke all these laws. And I tell you about all the laws they've broken. I put it in 500 words or less, just throwing a whole bunch of laws together. The legal profession is mandated to regulate itself in the public interest. So people, come on. You're letting lawyers step all over you. Why don't you use the laws and smack them as if you were the hand of God? I do. And this is why see, in the ABA, the rule of law, this is off their website, that little video. What does the rule of law mean? The same laws apply to everyone. Yeah, right. Everyone treated equally under the law. Bullshit. Government power. But see, none of this is going to happen. You don't have any constitutional rights unless you know what they are, and bring them to court and let everybody know the penalties for violating your constitutional rights and all the laws they're breaking. Okay, so I'm going to teach you my next video how to confront the Supreme Court. And those bunch of knuckleheads have their rules and regulations, but see, that's holding you to the standard of a legal, learned, educated professional. And they can't do that. That's for them to do that. That would be violating the oath. That would be violating your right for a fair trial. I mean, how is it fair that you don't have the legal education? So how would they hold you to that statute of limitations of a legal professional, and you just finding out for me? So in the public interest, that would make that statute of limitations null and void. To hold me to that statute of limitations would be in the interest of the bar, not in the public interest. And so in interest to be served, we must do what's in the public interest and maintain the public trust so that I can fairly be heard out. Because what happened to me up to now was clearly a conspiracy against rights under the color of law. And for you not to hear me out and reject my motion, my claim, my petition, would add to that conspiracy against rights under the color of law. Your oath requires you to hear me out. They know they have to hear you out because of a couple of laws you do. That's how I see people. Those are a bunch of laws I just said. So it's you could do a, what do they call it? A transcript of this, and then type that part out and look up every other word. You know, some people cuss and it's every other word, but with me, every other word I say is quite literally a law. Or, you know, every now and oh, this one, a conspiracy against rights under the color of law led to conspiracy to commit murder. That's me telling my story, you know, about how everybody just ignored me. I didn't have a right to a quick and speedy trial. You know, nobody made sure I did. That's my constitutional right. Bringing it up, I was told it was between me and my attorney. And I started yelling. I told them when I get back out there, reporting misconduct is mandatory in both rules of the code. And then he took off, told the judge. And they took me from court down into the Tombs. I walked the Green Mile, and they tried real hard. It's just me reading the hospital report from Cook County Jail. There's a hospital called Cermak Hospital, and they tried to cave in my skull. What they did to my body. So they were trying to break all my bones and twist me out of shape, and went on for a long time. But it was nothing compared to all that kicking and stomping and they did to my skull. I was handcuffed. I passed out on the ground. Woke me up. Passed out. Woke up, passed out from pain. The oath and the code of judicial conduct. So remember, there's penalties for violating the oath, and the judge violating the code of judicial conduct. That's deprivation of rights. Okay? Penalties for deprivation of rights. In the Interest of Justice Act, you know, so you should read that, because that says, you know, penalties for violating the interest of justice. Ill-gotten gains. That's just me telling you everything they earn by doing what they do. Ill-gotten gains, then you could take it off, because, you know, just watch the video. I just explained to you what ill-gotten gains is and how they can lose it all. Ethics violations have penalties. So remember, anything I talk about that they didn't do, that's also ethic violations. You can actually get people from your company for ethics violations. Look up ethics violations in the workplace. You know, you can look up ethic violations in anything. Not in the public interest. That's a law. So that carries a lot of weight in a court of law. But see, if we had things my way, you know, if I were president, congressperson, governor, mayor, I would do my best to see that all of you, you know, had the best legal education possible. You know, so that way, you know, you don't go from high school to prison like I did. You know, I lost my first son because of the injustice in the justice system and child court custody. But that was my fault. I was going through a bad time at the time. I was in a bad bout of depression. I was having mental health issues. And, but I'm doing my best to stop what happened to me happening to you by teaching you what I know. Motion to reduce alimony. I was talking to somebody, and the little lady was making more money than him, and talked to a couple other people that she can actually get, since she makes more money, and she took the house and all this, you know, you can actually get alimony from her now. So, well, lawyers didn't want to talk to him. He didn't have the money. Do it yourself, a DIY. Just show them where to do it on the internet. Penalties for disinformation in the media. Disinformation in the media range from monetary fines, content removal, and imprisonment. So people, when, you know, you see somebody on the media, you know, lying, even on social media, you know, when it's influencers and stuff, You can file for ethics violations in the media. Just look up ethics violations in the media complaint form. Ethics violation in the media. Penalties for disinformation in the media. You know, I'm pro-life. I've always been because I'm a Christian. But if we were truly a theocracy, you know, that's why they created the Dobbs decision. But that was in a parochial interest, which is against the law. You can't do anything in interest of a theocracy, you know, a religion of theocracy. And then I put we are a corporacy. So underneath Dobbs, overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, I'm a religious person and I stand by my vows. I've always thought this, no man stands taller than he that stoops to help a child. But no health care, no food, no housing, no hope for the next generation, for your children, for your children's children, and their children. I want to stop. So the easiest way to stop to do this is look up the basic obligations of public service, and laws repugnant to the United States Constitution are considered void. Remember that, okay? So Roe versus Wade was created in the public interest to give everybody a choice. So if you don't want to, you don't go. If you do, if it's for health reasons, you know, it was called freedom of choice. And somebody taking that away from you saying, hey, we're injecting our religious beliefs in your life, suck it up, buttercup, is illegal. Reasonable doubt mandatories of, which rarely exists in a court of law. Both times, in my cases, I'm trying to overturn two wrongful convictions. There was no reasonable doubt. The judge decided who would testify, excluded all my witnesses, even the police. Both cases, I wanted the cops to testify and I wanted to testify to their police report. As simple as that. But it would have proved me not guilty. It would have exonerated me in both occasions. But the judge decided that no cop needed to testify. Only the Karens that pointed the finger. There was no proof. Just finger pointing, accusations. So that was not beyond a reasonable doubt. So I'm just going, I didn't make that shit up. I'm just reading the law to you, okay? I love reading. I learned to read before I started school. My older sister started teaching me when she started learning. And I never lost my lust for reading. I love going to the library. I love the books, the way they smell, and just seeing all these different. You know, I go on the internet now, but I still really enjoy literature. You know, the hard copy version. But I'm old. I grew up, and I still enjoy the old school way. But the internet is easier now because I don't have to drag you to the law library or the library when I was younger and I would try to explain stuff, I had a bunch of morons who would laugh at me. What do you know? You're not a lawyer. Oh, you know what you're talking, you know. But see, I used to copy a lot of stuff, and because I had to go to court or help people with different things, and go to court with that, and go over a lot of stuff with my dad. So my dad knew because he knew how I loved to read, and. But anyways, disclosure law is not just mandatory in law. That's mandatory here when I'm going through this wrongful eviction. You know, I wanted disclosure on the black mold, what they did. You know, the plumbing's all out of whack. It's just old, decrepitated. You know, rust coming out, you know, in the faucets, and black mold coming out in the faucets, and I want, you know. Want to know what electrical damage there was, what kind of damage all these leaks caused. And the landlord and the lawyer told me both. I do not They don't have to tell me. It's none of my business. But it's required in disclosure. Color of law by definition. That's just abuse of power. You think it's legal because lawyers and judges and politicians are doing it, but you just don't know the law. So basically violating the letter of the law. So they're making up laws that violate the color of law. I mean, the rule of law. So that's color of law. Okay. Giving unlawful orders. You can't give them and you can't take them. Okay. So the constitutional crisis is just saying, hey, fuck the Constitution. Nobody got due process. Racial profiling is okay again. Like it used to be when America was great. I grew up in the 60s. I had a really rough time. 60s, 70s, 80s. Now, I'm still having a rough time. Fighting with some crazy landlord. Penalties for violating the oath of public service. Living under the color of law is what you're going through. Even if you don't have a case, come on, seriously. Even when you just go on your phone and you have to opt out so they don't sell your information, legally it should be an opt-in. And they should, we'll pay you for your information because we're going to use that to make us money. But they've been doing it without even you knowing it. And now somebody talked about it, and what happened? They got sued, and then the payments were deferred. They don't have to pay it. They were told, hey, just don't do it again, and as long as you don't do it for 2 years, But if you don't do it for 2 years, then we'll drop the whole thing. And then you're able to do it again, and then we'll just go over it. We'll just do it again. Okay. See, I just explained a lot of stuff. Okay, this is legal reform. Whoa, I talk too much. Yeah, I know. I don't mean to. Well, that's my goal. Right here. That's my goal. Get the youngest people as possible involved in politics. First we'll get them. If I had my way, if I was your president, your congressman, congresswoman, your governor, your mayor, your councilman, I would do my best to see that you got the legal education necessary so that you'll never live under the color of law again. If I had it my way, I know I could see to it that by the time you graduate high school, you'll be ready to take the bar. That's a dream of mine. I mean, I lost mine. Never had the money. They made it so expensive. When I was a little kid, all you had to do was pay room and board. But when I finally got old enough to go to college, and now you're in forever debt. Now, if you want to fix that, look up the public trust doctrine. See what it says about education. Look up the public trust doctrine. I did a video on that. Nothing but peace and love to you. Remember, I always stand behind you. I'll stand next to you. In front of you, I have to. Because this is who I am. This is who you are. I took a pledge of allegiance to you. The only thing I love more than my country are my people. We the people. Thank you and good night.